Good evening and welcome to another edition of Choose the Challenge. I am LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group, and I am so excited for this episode of Choose the Challenge for a couple reasons. Number one, it is Women's History Month, and the theme is Women Who Tell Our Stories, and also because I have a very special guest who is also a dear friend, none other than Vismaya Rubin out of Florida, Hollywood, Florida to be exact. And before I bring her on, I want to tell you a little bit about Vismaya. Vismaya Rubin is also known as the #1 gratitude gangster. And we're going to get into what does that really mean. But in her business, which is Living in Gratitude Today, her whole focus is to help heal our wounds from the inside in order for us to manifest the life that we want on the outside. She helps us to tap into those blocks, how to use gratitude to help build sustainable, lasting, loving relationships. Her past experience, 20 years teaching in the inner city school, helped her to tap into some of the skills that she's going to tell us today to help influence and impact and shift and shape the lives of young boys and girls who are now adults of their own and making a difference in the world. I want to bring Vismaya to the stage right now. Vismaya, how is it going?
Hello, my friend. Thank you for having me here. I always love spending time with you, even virtually.
Yes. Well, in addition to all the amazing work that you're doing in the lane of gratitude, you're also a mental health advocate. And we're going to talk a little bit about how these two can go hand in hand, right?
Definitely.
So I want to just get right into it, Vismaya. And I know it seems perhaps very intuitive, but can you give your definition of what it means to live in gratitude?
So for me, it's about living in gratitude today is about finding those moments in our day that make us smile, that shine the light, that give us a moment of hope, a moment where we can say thank you, a moment where we can actually take a deep breath and go, wow, that was amazing. And it could be because something happened, and it could also be because something didn't happen. But it's the ability to recognize those little small moments that may not seem monumental to anybody else that make your day that much brighter. That's for me what really living in gratitude today is about, because we remember the monumental moments, but it's those little tiny moments that make us smile, that bring us joy, that we sometimes forget or we don't pay attention to.
What you said is very powerful because when you think about our life is comprised of little moments built upon each other. And then there's that birthday party or that big thing that we're celebrating. But it's really those day to day moments. And sometimes we're so busy in the doing that we miss the moments. We miss those opportunities to pause and be grateful. Yes.
Definitely. And I think, seeing those moments in joyful times and also seeing those moments in times of despair. And that's really the power of gratitude, because we get to see them in both. And sometimes we forget that we can experience moments of gratitude or gratitude wins in the middle of sadness.
And when you said that, I was thinking, it's 15 years now. I lost both my aunt, my mom's sister, and my grandfather a day apart. And so we had their funerals a day apart. And as we were leaving and driving back home, um, I saw what I've never seen before, a double rainbow crossing the highway. It was just unbelievable. I mean, we literally pulled the car over and just sat in. When I reflect on what you're saying about gratitude, we paused and we sat in that moment of gratitude because for us, that was confirming, right? That they were together, all is well with them. Yes, we're sad, but all was well with them.
I love that, being able to stop and recognize those moments. It was funny yesterday. I took my younger nephew, for the first time on an adventure, just one on one. We've done things with my other nephew, but this was the first time that he and I have been together one on one. Not been together, but like on it for an allotted amount of time. We were going on an adventure. Nobody else was coming. It was just us. And I was excited, but I was also a little nervous because I knew where we were going, but I hadn't been there in a while, and I wasn't sure if he would like it. And there was no electronics, and it was nature. We were out in nature, but it's one of my favorite places in South Florida. And we had a wonderful day. Everything was perfect. And on the way back, and this is the replay that's in my head, is he said, Titi, I think we should go on an adventure for 2 weeks in the summer, just you and me. And I've told my brother the story like 3 times, and he probably thinks that I'm losing it, like I don't remember telling him. But it was such a profound moment, because that was his way of saying, I had a really nice time. And it melted my heart. My heart was exploding. It was really beautiful. So those small moments that bring us joy. When I first really started to practice gratitude, like consciously practice gratitude, it was probably the most hellacious year of my life. My dad had part of his lung removed. 2 days later, my cousin's husband was killed. 3 weeks later, my aunt went into the hospital for the last time. 3 weeks after that, my mother had a stroke. And I was telling the story to somebody, and she's like, Vismaya, I'm not coming near you. Like, what do you mean? She goes, I'm not coming near you. I'm like, why? She goes, you have just told me 17 things that were horrible in your life. And I said, that's funny, because I've also told you about 95 that were really great in the midst, in spite of all that was going on, all of these little moments of joy, and you did not hear one. Wow. And she stopped, and she's like, you know what? You're right. So I really believe that when we practice, because we have to practice gratitude, you find those moments even in the middle of chaos. And I think that is the true beauty. Like, if you're experiencing profound sadness, and boom, God showed you a double rainbow, source, whatever words you want to use. And you were able to say and able to recognize that this isn't just a double rainbow. This is, these are my people sending me a sign saying we're okay.
You just mentioned, and to those of you that are joining us on Choose a Challenge, I'm here with Vismaya Rubin, the Gratitude Gangsta, and we're talking about how gratitude can change your life. And Vismaya, you said something that caused me to pause, that in sharing with your friend, she didn't hear all of the beautiful flowers of gratitude that you were showing her. She only saw the thorns. And I think, unfortunately, in our society, in our world, we are so bombarded with negativity, whether it's, we're listening to it, the imagery, that it darkens our lens. And that's the only thing we focus on. Right? We miss those beautiful moments. Like, I got up this morning, and I love being outside, and being back in Atlanta, I don't have the pleasure of enjoying the Arizona sunrises when I'm at home, but the sun still rises here. And I was looking out my window, and it wasn't the beautiful, different colors of the sky reflecting back at me, but the warmth of the sun felt so powerful to me this morning. And I just stood there for like 10 minutes, just being thankful for the sunrise.
It's beautiful. I believe that Joe Dispenza, in his book, The Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he talks about how we become addicted to behaviors. And I believe that we are addicted to both negative and positive behaviors. And when we watch the news and we listen to people complain about the same story 17 times, or we ourselves complain or tell the same story 17 times, it perpetuates that addiction. It feeds that addiction. So how do we break it? How do we stop it? And I think part of it is first just recognizing, wait a minute, Why am I sharing this negative story? Why do I need to spend 3 minutes of my life telling another person this negative story? I'm guilty of it because when when I feel like I'm wrong, boy, I want everybody to know. And then to do that, have that challenge with yourself saying, no, we're not doing that today. What am I going to fill that space with? What am I going to talk about? What conversations am I going to have? It's very interesting when we start to pay attention to the language that we use with ourselves and with other people. So the first thing we have to really just start watching that and paying attention to it. And you caught yourself. You're like, well, I may not be at the Arizona sunrise, but you know what? There's still something really beautiful about the Atlanta sunrise. And I think that's pretty powerful because when we take on those roles, it's like, what do I talk about? I'm so used to complaining. I sometimes challenge myself. You cannot tell a negative story at all today. And then I open my mouth and I'm like, no, you can't say that one. You can't say that one. But you can say this one. And I have to consciously think about it sometimes because we get addicted to these behaviors. And then people are like, you're so wonderful. Look at all the things you have to do. No. Feed into the positivity.
Yeah, and you just said that it's a practice and we have to be conscious, right? And so let's talk a little bit about the practice because you mentioned when you made a decision. So the first thing is decide, and that sometimes is the hardest thing for people to do. But you made a decision at this point forward, I'm going to jump into this life of gratitude practice. But then followed all of these events that you could just be justified to say, well, there's not much to be grateful for. I need to I can wallow in the muck. What was it that kept you going?
I think what keeps me going, or what has always kept me going in the middle, is that I build my gratitude practice when times are good. And I just shared with you, my mother recently passed away. And the rabbi said to me the night before she died, he says, I don't have a lot of words to say, but I'm going to tell you this: live with her. And I had to remind myself that even though I was in a sad place, give myself permission to really be joyful, because this was the last night. Even though she was knocked out and couldn't talk to me, this is the last night you get to be there. And you could either be really sad about it and just be in the sadness, or you could be sad about it and also be grateful that you have that time together. But I think the first thing is when we choose what we want, like I'm choosing to be happy today, or I'm choosing to be in gratitude. And then everything happens to you. And we have to find, we've talked about this before, but find these pattern interrupts, ways to interrupt that pattern in the brain that's throwing you down that negative cycle. So what are some things you can do to break the patterns? What are some things that feel good for you? Like some of the things that I have to do is, you're going down the pattern, Vismaya. Stop. And say to myself, stop. No more. This may be happening right now, but this is not the trajectory of your life. It's right now. And that doesn't always bring me in a space of, woo, life is great and feeling good. But it cuts that vibration of being really angry out. And I don't think we should stop feeling sad when we feel sadness, because we're going to experience sadness. We're human beings. Someone dies, we feel sad. But it's allowing ourselves to be in that space of profound sadness that it keeps us there and we can't see joy. Or we predict that we're going to be sad because we're missing somebody. Or we predict that the event's not going to go well because of X, Y, and Z. We already had those predictions. What if it was going to go right? And I know that it sounds for a lot of people very woo-woo and very that works for some people, but not for me. Sometimes it's the small steps that we have to take, the small resets of the mind to get us to where we want to go. And I think that just having, even something as simple as stop, let it go, or repeating a mantra, whatever it is for you. You know, I have a few of my own that I like to say to myself.
Yeah. When you were just sharing that, I was reminded of a conversation I had with a friend a couple years ago, and I may have shared this with you. And he he had gone through quite a few losses over the years. And at the end, well, it wasn't even near the anniversary of this family member's passing, maybe about 3 months out. And he said, well, you know, August is coming around and I know it's going to be a miserable month. I said, why? What's going on? And he's like, well, you know, this person passed and it's just going to be miserable. And I thought, why are you speaking that? Why are you speaking doom and gloom on your life? And like you said, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. But to anticipate it before it's even arrived, I really couldn't understand that. And yes, he had exactly what he had spoken over his life. It was a miserable time for him.
Our words are the most powerful things we have. And the older I get, and the more I practice, and the more I am in the space of really practicing gratitude, the more I realize that my words are the most powerful things. And if I declare something, it's going to happen. And I play little games with myself. You know, I declare I'm going to get a parking spot, or I declare I'm going to get XYZ. And it's the same thing when we declare we're going to have a miserable day, we get that.
Yeah.
And I think it was Henry Ford who said, "What you think, whether you think you can or think you can't,
You're right.
either way, you're right."
Yes.
And that was said a long time ago. But really,
Yes.
our words are the most powerful things we have. Our thoughts that we formulate into words, even if we don't speak them, thinking them, we're not fooling anybody, because the
No.
subconscious mind hears them, the universe hears them.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, now when we're talking about gratitude in your mind, because you talk about practice, do you see it as a skill or a virtue?
I want to say I think it's a skill. It's a skill because some people innately feel more grateful. But I think if we talk about it as a virtue, for people who are not experiencing gratitude, they're like, oh, that's not me. I don't have it. But when we talk about it as a practice, it's like if I look at myself right now and if I thought weight loss was a virtue, I may never go to the gym or eat an apple. I would throw my weights away, throw my bands away, tell my friend that I work out with to go away. And I would eat chocolate cake all day because there's nothing I could do about it. But because it's a skill, I know that I can do certain things and build those muscles. And, there's a lot of research that's showing that, we're the research is changing, because they used to say, well, 40% or 50% of what happens in your life, is your reaction is because that's how you were born. And now they're changing it, and it's your perception, it's the outside environment. And when we look at things that way, like, we have control. And like we said about our words are powerful. So if we don't look at gratitude as a practice, we don't have the ability to capture the juiciness of it and grow that muscle.
I had a conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago, and he's 92. And this is no exaggeration, Vismaya. I have never in my life heard him say a negative word about anyone. And so I asked him, I said, how did you become that way? And he said, when he was little, because he's an orphan, he said there was so much negativity around him. And he goes, I don't know why, but I just knew I didn't want to be that. And the only thing I knew to do was either keep my mouth shut or say something positive. And he's kept that his whole life. And it's so interesting because, mom on the other extreme, it's like, oh, you're not going to believe da, da, da. And he will just sit silent. And after she finishes, he'll say, well, did you think about, and he'll give her just a different perspective. And I wish I had that, because I see that as a gift, right? But even in that gift, like you're able to take the tools, the practice, and show people that you don't have to be in this negative state. You can choose. And you may not get it right all the time, right? I think
You
that's
won't get
important for our
you,
listening audience to know. You may not get it right all the time.
and that's okay. You know, if we give ourselves a break, we practice again, we try again, we do it again. And I think that's the most important part, because people were like, oh, you know, if I can't get it the first time, I have nothing to be grateful for. And that was what my students used to say, because I would walk into a 9th grade class and say, hi, I'm Miss Rubin. You're going to keep a gratitude chart. And they would be like, what? And they go, she's crazy. What is she saying? She doesn't know my life. And I remember hearing them the first day of school, and I would sit back and I would just kind of laugh. And I was like, okay. And they would talk to each other. Well, we're going to make stuff up. That's fine. But I want 20 things on that chart that are unique to the day. And the constant reminder of saying, hey, did you look for things you're grateful for? Hey, did you look for things you're grateful for? That constant reminder triggered something in their brain, because it wasn't about the grade. Because honestly, if they would have written down 20 things and they were all made up, I still would have given them the A. But it was about having the ones that consciously started to look. You knew who they were because they had the shift. Nothing in their life changed, but they had a paradigm shift because the way they viewed their life changed. So if you're going to constantly look at your life and going, woe is me, my life is hard, my life, I'm struggling, that may be true. But what's one thing that you did better today than you did yesterday? You know, I remember hearing, I think it was Michelle Gayland, her husband, she and her husband, I should say, are these big happiness researchers, positive psychologists. And she says, you know, I was studying positive psychology and I was depressed. One of them said it, and I'm mixing the stories. But she said, you know, the only thing that I could think of to be grateful for today was that I got out of bed and brushed my hair. And that was the biggest thing for me. And if that's the place you're in and that's the one thing you can do, fantastic. If you open the door for somebody and they said thank you, maybe that's the one thing you could do today. So find one thing that you could do better today than you did yesterday. If you're in bed all day because you're lethargic and you're tired and you don't want to get up, maybe take 5 steps, something small, whatever it is. But we always can find something to do to shift. And I think sometimes, you know, we always talk about our way of being, but when you're in the middle of that muck, sometimes it's the action of doing that can change the way of being. So moving our body, and you know, you and I joke about hip swirls all the time, like doing hip swirls and moving our body. And every time I do a hip swirl, I want to take photos for you. But doing something to move our body, you know, dancing, walking. During the pandemic, I walked so much. You know, I was waving at all the neighbors. They would hear me singing and they probably preferred I wouldn't, but that was okay. Moving the body was what did it for me. So sometimes, you know, we always hear about being, a way of being, and gratitude is a way of being. But when you're in the middle of the craziness, sometimes you have to do in order to get that way of being.
I like that. So it's not always automatically finding something where you're vocalizing or verbalizing how thankful you are for it.
I don't think so, because I think what happens is we hear people say, oh, wake up in the morning and say 3 things you're grateful for. Okay, great. I'm grateful I woke up. I'm grateful I have a house. I'm grateful I have good coffee. I'm grateful I have internet. Tomorrow, wake up and say 3 things you're grateful for. I'm grateful I woke up. I'm grateful I have a house. I'm grateful I have internet. I'm grateful I have coffee. And we start to repeat this rote gratitude list, and there's nothing there. I think that's the biggest mistake, and that's one of the reasons why it doesn't work for people. But when we wake up,
let's pause right there. Let's dig into that because I like that. So now let's talk about the feeling part.
There's no feeling in that moment. We're repeating something that we know to say because it's supposed to make us feel a certain way, or it's what we're supposed to do. But what's happening is we're not training our brain to find any of those juicy moments because we're repeating something that happened 17 years ago. I'm happy I woke up. I'm happy I have a bed. These are the things I'm supposed to say. But when we wake up every day and we look and we tell our brain to look for our gratitude wins, or however I call them my gratitude wins, or whatever you want to say, we're telling our brain to find those moments that bring me joy, find those moments that make me smile, find those reasons where I can go, thank you, God. Find those reasons that I can look at myself and go, good job today. And those are unique to the day. And the more that we train our brain to do that, the more we find those moments. And I could say that over and over and over again until somebody starts to do that practice. They will not understand what I'm saying. And I think that's where we see the juiciness of life, even when life is not feeling very juicy.
And what you said, it's unique to the day. So I'm not pulling from the past, even though I may be grateful for the things that God has brought me through or I've achieved. But it's like in the now. So when you're saying it's the day, let's talk about being present, because often we have the state of mental unrest or distress because we're upset about what we didn't do, right? The past, or we're fearful about what could have happened, what could happen. But when you're in the now, to me, based upon what you're saying, it sounds like that's where the gratitude, living in gratitude today happens. It's being very present, very aware. Yes.
Yes, it's about looking. Yes, because when we're aware, we see those moments. If we're living in worry or something that's going to happen, we don't catch them. But being present to, and again, it's the little things. Going back to the thought of being in the future worrying, a friend of ours, Nancy Matthews, she was, I was freaking out about something. And she said to me, Vismaya, is that problem going to be solved tomorrow? Do you need to have the problem solved tomorrow? No. Do you need to have the problem solved in a week? No. Do you need to have the problem solved in 2 weeks? I'm like, yes. She goes, put it on the back burner. Pause it. Worry about it in 2 weeks. And as ridiculous as that sounded to me, I was like, oh, whatever. I remember I was like really annoyed. Like, that's the best you got? And then I stopped for a second and I thought about it. I'm like, what is me worrying about it going to do now? It's going to put me into a position 2 weeks ahead of myself that I don't even know what's going to happen. But I'm already predicting that it's going to be a failure. So I put it to the back burner, and then I'm able to start to create something from nothing. And that's where going back to the thoughts and our words and our actions, being in that space of gratitude. Like your friend, oh, I know August is going to be the worst month ever. You're right.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to have to freak out in 2 weeks. You're right. But what if you didn't? What if something miraculous happened in those 2 weeks? And it's interesting because, many of us have this belief in a higher power. And we have this belief in we'll say God, because some people say God, some people can say whatever you call it, your higher power. But if I believe in God and I believe there's something out there for me, every time I'm doubting, I'm losing faith and I'm not in a space of gratitude. But every time I remember something and every time I practice gratitude, it reinforces my faith. And I posed a question recently, does gratitude cultivate faith or does faith cultivate gratitude? And I don't think the answer matters. I think that it's a cycle. Because when I believe, because that's why we pray, that's why we go to religious services, that's why we have, this belief system, because we have faith. But the second we stop believing or being grateful for something that hasn't yet happened, we're falling back into a cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I know the scripture talks about giving thanks with a grateful heart. And it sounds like, of course I would. Why wouldn't I give thanks with a grateful heart? But it goes back to what you said. If I'm doing things just out of routine, then my heart, my feelings, my emotions are not tied to it. I'm just saying it because I have to, and then I move on. So it does require us, as you're saying, to be very aware, to be conscious of not only the words we're speaking, but in how we are being, how we are showing up for ourselves first and to the world second. Um, I'm going to do a quick cutaway, and then I want to come back and talk about the work that you're doing for mental health advocacy. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, well, we've got a few more minutes left before the show is over. I can't believe time is almost up, but I want to talk a little bit about mental health. And we know May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but mental health is something that we all are dealing with every single day. Just as our physical health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, it is a daily journey. But you are a mental health advocate, and I know just in the work that we've done on previous panel discussions over the years, especially starting in the pandemic, I learned so much. I know I came in thinking I was at a certain place, a little cocky, but learning tools that after 2 years in the pandemic, I thought, okay, I need to go into this little toolbox because I'm struggling here. So I want to take myself down and just give you the platform, Vismaya, to talk a little bit to our audience about mental health, and then any lasting words about gratitude, and most importantly, how people can connect with you and your community. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect.
So when we think about mental health, we think about the ways we're feeling, how are we being in the world. And I think one of the brilliant things that the pandemic did is it made it an okay conversation to have. I'm not feeling good. These used to be taboo subjects. I don't feel good. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. We weren't allowed to talk about that, because if we talked about it, it was our weakness, you know? And I think one of the brilliant things of the pandemic is that it allowed us to be okay with not being okay. And not in the sense of we're going to stay in that space, but to own it and to recognize it and to figure out ways that we could now shift the fact that we weren't feeling okay. And for me, one of those tools, as we've talked about, is gratitude. So how do we practice gratitude in the midst of not feeling okay? And this is one of the greatest tools that I share with people, and it's very simple. And it's about stopping those thought patterns in the middle so that we can find that moment of light even when we're not feeling it. So if we're feeling sad, we're feeling depressed, we're feeling anxious, what can I do? Grab your cell phone, set the alarm to go off every 3 to 4 hours. When your alarm goes off, ask yourself these questions. Who or what made a difference for me? What did I do for myself? How did I nourish my mind, body, or spirit? And what made me smile or laugh until my sides hurt? The brilliant thing is this: if nothing happened, it's okay, because you're going to do it again in a few hours. The more we start to do this, what starts to happen is that we start to see those bright moments in our day. We start to see those little things that we've done right that can keep us moving forward. And sometimes when we're not feeling joyful or we're not feeling motivated to do things, there's something that's stopping us. We know that. We know that consciously. But we don't always know what it is that's blocking us. And by practicing this little habit, what we start to do is we start to shift from focusing on only our oys, and we start to focus on our joys. We start to focus on the little things that are going right. The more that we do that, the more that we start to see that we feel better emotionally, physically, spiritually. And that's what allows us to keep pushing forward. And I think, one of the reasons why it's so important to me is I grew up with a bipolar mother, and I watched her suffer. And I would absolutely say, if you feel that there's something chemically or medically wrong, you need to see a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But there are things that you can do for your mental health. And one of them I just shared, which is practice gratitude. So if, definitely reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you'd like to throw some ideas back and forth just for a few minutes to see if we can get you on the right path.
Thank you so much, Vismaya. This was very rich. And again, if you have any concerns, please reach out to your medical professional. But what Vismaya is sharing with you are tools, strategies to create a practice, a discipline, a way of being in your life that, whether it's good times, challenging times, there's still the day, there's still the now, and there's those little moments of gratitude. And you mentioned the 4 questions to ask ourselves, which I think is just amazing, to help us to recognize those things, to pause and to just embrace, right?
I think the other one, and this one that I'd like to share as well, is one of my favorite mantras now is "This too shall pass." So when I'm in the middle of craziness, reminding myself that this too shall pass. But on the flip side, when I'm in the moment of joy and excitement and love, this too shall pass. So be present, be here, be in the now, enjoy the moment, because it's fleeting. So it goes for both, in the sadness and then in the joy.
Cycle of life.
Huh?
The cycle of life, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been wonderful, amazing. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us again on Choose to Challenge. Stay tuned, because we are going to have Vismaya back during Mental Health Awareness Month, where we're going to take a deep dive and give some tools, some tips, some strategies so that you can live your best mental well life possible. And to those of you who are joining Choose to Challenge, remember that life is as you make it, and your words are powerful. So choose to challenge those thoughts, those systems, those negative Nancy's that are out there. Sorry, Nancy. And rise up and create your best life. Live in the now, be present, and live in gratitude today. Thank you so much, Vismaya.
It is my pleasure, and I always say yes to you no matter what. So.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you next Monday on another edition of Choose to Challenge.